swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please, sir. Thank you.
Morning, sir. Could you tell us your full name and spell your last name, please?
Anthony Kemeny, K-E-M-E-N-Y.
I fear that I've been mispronouncing it all day, so I apologize about that.
That's
Where are you currently employed, sir?
the Department of Financial Services Bureau Fire, Arson, and Explosives Investigation.
That is a mouthful. What do you do there?
I conduct fire investigations for Orange Lake and Osceola County.
How long have you been conducting fire investigations for what I'm going to refer to as the department?
Just over 4 years.
Did you have law enforcement experience prior to joining the department?
Yes.
Can you tell the members of the jury about your prior law enforcement experience?
I had roughly over 7 years at the Eustis Police Department, did 2 years at the Maldora Police Department. I did roughly 3 years at the Lake County Sheriff's Office.
When you were working in those departments, did any of that experience include investigative experience?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell the members of the jury which one of those stops had investigative experience?
At the Eustis Police Department, I worked general crime, so we worked everything from your stolen bicycle to your robberies to your homicides. And then I moved over and worked some narcotics.
Can you tell us about your formal college education?
I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice administration.
And when you went to the department to conduct arson investigations, did you receive any formal training?
They sent us to 8 core classes for fire investigation.
So I'd like you to brag on yourself for a minute and tell us about those core classes that you took, how many hours they were, and what the purpose they served.
The core classes, looking back, I believe it's 360 hours. We cover latent investigation, we cover fire, we cover arson stuff. We cover post-blast, so after an explosion. We cover some legal stuff, just to kind of ensure that everything falls in line with the statutes and the Florida Administrative Code.
Did you take or have you taken any specialized classes beyond those initial core classes that you took?
Yes, I have a total of roughly 533 hours of fire investigative classes.
When those classes that you took, did you have to take examinations?
Yes,
Did you pass all your examinations?
yes, a lot of those courses are tested.
Before you started doing your own individual investigations, did you conduct investigations under supervision?
Yes,
Can you tell the members of the jury about that, please?
we have roughly a 4-month field training program where we start out shadowing another detective, another fire investigator, and then as we progress through training, where we take over those cases and we start working those cases individually until we're finally at the point that we can be released to do our cases on our own.
Do you hold any certifications or certificates related to fire or arson investigation?
I do.
Can you tell the members of the jury which ones you hold?
I hold a certified fire investigator through the Bureau of Fire Standards and Training through the State Fire Marshal Service. I also hold a certified fire and explosives investigator through the National Association for Fire Investigators.
And what did you have to do to obtain those certificates?
For the certified fire investigator for the state, that requires the 8 core classes, and then we sit and take a pro board test. For the NAFI, the National Fire Investigators certification, we had to sit and take a written test.
Can you tell the members of the jury approximately how many fire investigations you've conducted over the course of your 4 years with the department?
I have roughly 169 fires.
During those investigations, have you collected evidence,
Yes.
reached conclusions and opinions on the source or origin of fires?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, we'd ask we tender the witness to the court for opinion testimony in the area of fire and arson investigations.
Any objection, Mr. Barber?
No objection, Your Honor.
You may proceed, Mr.
Thank you. Were you employed as a fire detective with the department back on February 27th of 2022?
Yes.
And Did you respond that night to the Wawa at 3951 Central Florida Parkway in reference to the fire investigation involving a dirt bike and some gas pumps?
Yes, I did.
Did you eventually prepare a report with some findings and conclusions?
Yes, I did.
So I want to talk about your initial arrival. What happened or who called you, without saying what they said, what happened or who called you that prompted you going out to the scene that evening?
I was notified by Sergeant Rivera, the Osceola County Sheriff's Office, that they were on the scene of a fire. It involved a deputy, and they needed assistance in determining the origin causes.
Do you remember approximately what time you arrived at the Wawa?
I believe it was after 9:30.
Were other members of law enforcement still on scene when you arrived?
Yes, they were. The Osceola County Sheriff's Office was there.
Again, without saying what was said to you, were you briefed by someone at the scene about what had occurred involving the fire?
Yes, I was.
Who was that person that briefed you?
Sergeant Rivera?
They gave you their understanding of what happened.
Yes.
And did you use that to begin your investigation?
Yes, it did.
So what was the first thing you did?
Prior to when we start the investigation, I gather my tools, I gather my camera, any tools that I might need to dig or kind of poke around or scrape. A pair of nitro gloves and a pair of leather working gloves.
When you started to conduct your investigation, were you working in tandem with another member of law enforcement?
Yes.
Who was that person?
The CSI for Osceola County.
Why did the two of you do it together?
So that we don't run over each other. We're both taking photographs, we're both looking at pieces of evidence, so that we kind of don't stumble over each other.
Now, when you arrived on scene, was it your understanding that the dirt bike at issue was in the same location as it was when the fire initially started?
No.
It was your understanding, if I'm wrong, tell me, that the bike had been moved. Is that right?
Yes, I had.
Where had it been moved in relation to the pumps?
I believe it was roughly 100 feet from the pump.
And did you find any other items of evidentiary value near the bike when you examined the scene?
There was a gas cap, some melted plastics, and I think a handful of tools, like hand tools.
Were those near the bike or were those near the pump?
All that was near the pump.
What, if anything, did you find near the bike?
There was the bike, and then just off to the side, if you're facing the bike from the pump to the left, would be some items of clothing.
During your training and your investigations, are you familiar with the look of clothing that has suffered a burn of some sort?
Yes, sir.
The items of clothing that you observed near the bike, did they appear to have been burned?
Yes.
Now, may I approach the witness with what's been previously marked as State's Exhibits P and Q?
You may.
They've both been shown to counsel. We'll do it one at a time. I'm handing you State's Composite Exhibit P. It's a series of photographs. Do you recognize those? Take a look at each one, please.
Yes, I did.
And what is depicted in those photographs?
The area where the dirt bike was found.
And do those photographs, I'm sorry, give me a second. Do those photographs fairly and accurately depict the items found near the bike as you saw them on the night of February 27th?
Yes.
And State's Exhibit Q, I'm going to hand you that one. It's another composite of photographs. Please look at each and tell me if you recognize them.
Yes, I did.
And what do you recognize them to be?
This is the area near the gas pump.
And do the photographs depicting that area fairly and accurately depict things as they look back on February 27, 2022?
Yes, they do.
Your Honor, we ask the court to admit State's Exhibits P and Q as the next number of exhibits.
Any objection, Mr. Barber, to either P or Q?
No objection needed, Judge. Thank you.
All right, so what was marked as P will be 16 and Q will be 17.
For permission to publish exhibits 16 and 17?
You may.
So Detective Panini, I'm not gonna spend a ton of time on these because the jurors have seen some of these, but I do want to show you one photograph from State Exhibit 16. Do you recognize that image?
Here's
And what do you recognize it to be?
a photograph that I took of the dirt bike.
Did you notice any indications of burn or fire on the bike?
Yes.
Can you describe what you saw on the bike, and if that laser pointer is in front of you, it helps.
So the top area here, where the seat and cover for the fuel tanks would be, sustained fire damage. There's some area on the handlebars, and then coming down to where there should be side plastic pieces here. That also sustained fire damage there.
You said there should be plastic pieces and that it sustained fire damage. What was your conclusion from the fact that those pieces were not there?
That the bike has been involved in a fire.
So now I'm going to go to State's Exhibit 17. I'm publishing, let's see, photograph number 4 of State's Exhibit 17. Can you tell us what we're looking at in that photograph and what, if any, significance it had to you as an arson investigator?
This right here is the fuel cap for the dirt bike, the fuel tank. And then this section here is actually melted plastic, which has come off of the dirt bike.
How do you know just by looking at that photograph? And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Let's start with the fuel cap. How do you know that that burnt piece of plastic is the fuel cap?
So this, it's a circular shape. It's got small notches at the bottom. And that, the size of that matches the size of the fuel cap for the tank that's on the dirt bike.
All right. And then how do you know the rest of that photograph is burnt plastic? What do you see in that? Can you explain that, please?
So the way that this is on here and melted, this indicates to us that something had actually been involved in a fire and it melted. And the black that you see here is the plastic, where it starts to, when it's involved in a fire, it starts to turn back to its original state. So stickers and stuff like that will actually get consumed in the fire, and then the plastic will start to return to its original state.
When you say its original state, what do you mean?
That would be the original coloring that the plastic was when the manufacturer produced it.
So describe that to me. The plastic, what it is, and when it initially starts, after it's burned, and when it goes back to it.
So plastic starts out as essentially a liquid, and then it's put into molds and formed into different things. When it's involved in a fire, it melts down, so it goes back to its liquid state. And when it starts to cool, either by natural air or the fire department putting water on it, or somebody using a chemical fire extinguisher, the plastic will go back to its solid shape. But it's not, if it's involved in a fire, it's not going to return to that molded shape because that molded shape has already been adjusted.
What, if any, conclusions were you able to draw about where the fire started based upon your observations in this photo and other observations at the pump?
So we were able to determine that the fire started on the opposite side of the pump. And we determined this because the damage to the dirt bike and the melted plastic is still intact. There's a lot of other moving parts if the fire had originated at the dirt bike.
Explain what you mean by other moving parts. What would you have expected to see if the fire originated at the dirt pipe?
If the fire had originated at the dirt pipe, can we go back to that photo?
Yes, the photo of the dirt pipe?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
If the fire originated at the dirt pipe, more of the plastic would be gone, more of the seat, there's still some of the combustible material, the foam that's in the seat. There's still a little bit of that up there. There's still rubber on the handlebars. There's still insulation on all of the, most of the wiring. Sorry, I don't want to say all. There's some on most of the wiring that's there. So if the fire originated on this dirt bike, that and some of the external plastic pieces on the engine would be consumed in the fire.
Did you collect any items or debris for chemical testing from the scene?
Yes, I did.
Can you explain the process that you used to collect those items?
In collecting burn debris samples, we take either a quart can or a gallon can, lined or unlined, depending on what we're using at the time. I write on the can the case number, the date, and then I take a photograph of the can empty. I grab fire debris, I put it inside the can, I take another photograph, we close the lid, I take off my gloves, and then I take a picture. So each sample that we collect, we change our gloves for, because we don't want the possibility of cross-contamination in the samples, especially for pulling samples from different locations.
Karen, may I approach the witness and what's been marked as State's Exhibit R and shown the counsel?
Yeah.
Detective, this is State's Exhibit R. It's a composite of 3 photographs. Please look at each and tell me when you've had a chance to do that. Do you recognize those photos?
Yes, I do.
And what are they photographs of?
The evidence collection process.
And do they fairly and accurately depict the 3 locations from which you collected evidence in this case?
Yes.
All right, at this time, I ask court to admit State's Exhibit R as State's 18.
Mr. Barber.
No objection, Your
All right,
Honor.
States R will be admitted as States 18.
Commissioner, publish 18 now?
You may.
Thank you so much. So on the screen behind you, you can kind of just kind of show the members of the jury what you were talking about.
So this is where on the lid of the can, the Q1 is the first sample, Q2, Q3, Q4, we progress from there. If it's a control can, which means that we're sending another additional can to the lab to make sure that our cans in our vehicles aren't contaminated, that would start with a C1. And the case number is here. If we were to flip this can over, on the bottom of it would have the Q1, the case number, and the date and time that I took that sample.
And what did you collect into Q1? What did this?
I believe it was one of these pieces of clothing that were off. I think this one was closer to the dirt bike.
Okay. Publishing photograph 2 of State's Exhibit 18. The shadows were wicked on that side.
So this is Q2. This is a gallon can, and then the case number, and then I collected some of the clothing that's here.
So when you say collected the clothing material, are you like ripping parts of it off or just pieces on the ground, or what are you doing?
It depends. We try to fill the cans about 3/4 of the way full, so that we know that we have a good sample for the lab.
I'm publishing third photograph of State's 18. What are we looking at in that photograph?
This is Q3. So this is we're going back to the quart can, and then there was a sample of this plastic that was taken to fill the can about 3/4 of the way full.
Now, once you collected those debris and packaged them, did you send them to the lab with the department?
Yes.
And did you eventually receive a lab report with the results of the lab testing for accelerants?
Yes, I did.
Did any of the items come back positive for accelerants?
Yes.
Can you tell the members of the jury which items came back positive and what accelerant they came back positive from, if any?
Q1, 2, and 3 all came back positive for gasoline.
meaning that there was traces, or at least traces of gasoline on all of those items.
Yes.
During the course of your investigation, did you also review some relevant video from the use of force that occurred and shows when the fire began?
Yes, I did.
Specifically, did you review 3 deputy body-worn cameras and 2 in-car camera angles?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall which deputies you reviewed?
I do not.
Now, did you use what you observed in those videos, along with the evidence we've already discussed, to generate 4 possible hypotheses or opinions regarding the cause of the fire at the wall?
Yes.
Were you ultimately able to eliminate 3 of the 4?
Yes, I was.
And were you ultimately able to confirm and give an opinion as to the most probable cause of the fire at the gas pumps?
Yes, I was.
So let's start with the initial question of why generate multiple hypotheses instead of just saying this is the one I think is most likely and I'll just go with that.
So, when we're notified of a fire, we get some basic information, whether it comes from the fire chief or it comes from law enforcement or it comes from a civilian. We get some basic information. Trying to go in there unbiased. So we go into a fire scene, we look around, and then we'll conduct our interviews. And in this case, I generated 4 hypotheses because in that immediate area, there were 4 possible things we could have seen in that fire.
I interpret that as you're being thorough. Is that fair?
We tried.
All right. So I want to talk first about the 3 hypotheses that you were able to eliminate. All right? So the first hypothesis was the extreme heat of the engine of the dirt bike ignited the fuel vapor. Do you remember using that as a hypothesis?
Yes.
Can you tell the members of the jury why you thought the heat of the engine from the dirt bike was a possible cause of the fire?
Based on the information that we had, it was believed that the dirt bike was running extremely hot. So the heat generated from the engine area of that bike is a possibility when you're essentially pushing a machine to its limit. When you push a machine to its limit, you can kind of feel the heat starting to come off of things. So the excessive heat from the bike was a possibility.
Did you exclude that as the probable cause of the fire?
Yes, I did.
Can you explain to the jury how you came to the opinion that the extreme heat of the dirt bike was not the cause of the fire?
So going back to the photo that you had up earlier
Of the dirt bike?
Of the dirt bike.
So let's pause there for a moment. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit S. May I approach you?
You may.
Composite S, which I think is some more detailed photographs of the dirt bike. Can they help you? Do you recognize those photographs?
Yes.
And what are those photographs of?
There's a couple photographs of the dirt bike and then one of the fuel tank.
And do they fairly and accurately represent the dirt bike as you saw it back on the night of the incident?
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, we ask the court to admit State's Exhibit S as State's 19.
Mr. Miller, any objection?
No objection, Judge.
Right, State's House will be admitted now in State's 19.
So, Detective, now that I've shown you and it's in evidence, State's 19, would those photographs help you illustrate your point?
Yes.
Did you say I could publish on this?
You may go.
Thank you. All right. So, photograph number 1 of State's 19. As close as I can without being on there. You were sort of describing earlier what you observed on the bike, but I think this is a more complete picture. So if you could use the photograph and explain to the members of the jury what we're looking at and why it's significant to you.
So this is the top side of the dirt bike. There's still plastic fairings up here. There's very little, but there's still some of that polyethylene foam for the seat. And then you can kind of see some of the wiring here. It still has its insulation on it.
And what is the significance of the fact that there's still insulation on the wiring of the dirt bike?
If the fire had originated from the dirt bike, the insulation from the wiring would have been consumed in the fire.
Photograph number 2 of states 19. And I'll zoom in. Can you show us what is significant in this photograph in the back of the room?
So there's a couple things here. You can see some more of the wiring, but you can also see there's an aluminum radiator of some sort that's still in place. Typically, not always, but typically in vehicle fires, especially engine fires, the radiator is consumed because it's got a low ignition.
Why does a radiator have a low ignition point?
It's made of aluminum. Typically made of aluminum.
Aluminum has a low ignition point?
It has a low melting point of about 1,200 degrees, so most of your fires are above the 1,200 degree point.
Publishing photograph number 3 of states 19. Describe the significance of anything you see in this photograph, Detective.
So, can you slide down just a little bit?
Yes, sir. This way or this way?
No, the other way, I'm sorry.
This way?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So here you have the engine casing, the exhaust, but you still have the aluminum radiator, but you also still have rubber here. There's a piece of rubber, I believe, right here. There's another piece here. The rubber, because it's got the same properties as plastic, so it has a low melting point.
If the fire had originated with the bike, would you expect the rubber to be in the condition it's in this photograph?
No, if the fire had originated with the bike, I would expect to not see that rubber at all.
And finally, photograph number 4. Why did you take that photograph, and what's its significance?
This again depicts the rubber. There's plastic here. There's a rubber hose here. And then you can kind of see the remnants. There's a rubber hose here that comes into the radiator.
So my original question to you was, how were you able to exclude the hypothesis that the extreme heat of the engine of the dirt bike ignited the fuel vapor? And you told us that partly it was because of the condition of the dirt bike.
Yes.
Was there anything about the timing of the fire that allowed you to exclude this as a possibility?
So, in watching some of the videos, there was a delay in the time that the dirt bike stopped, and then the time that the fire had actually started.
So why is that important?
That allows any product to begin its cooling process.
So is another way to say that if the engine of the dirt bike had caused the fire, you would have expected the fire to start sooner
Yes.
because the engine was cooling the longer it sat.
Yes.
What about the location of the origin of the fire versus the dirt bike? Was that significant in excluding this hypothesis?
Yes, it is.
Can you tell the members of the jury why the location of the fire was significant?
If the fire had originated at the dirt bike, the fire would have traveled from the bike to the other side of the pump, not the other way around. From the video that I was able to review, you can see that the fire ignites on one side of the pump and then travels to the bike.
Anything else on the first hypothesis and why you excluded it? The second hypothesis was the extreme heat of the engine parked on the opposite side of the pump. So let's be clear what we're talking about there. You're talking about the vehicle, I believe it was the gray vehicle that was parked on the near side of the pump. Is that right?
Yes, on the side of the pump.
Where the fire started,
Yes.
right? ready, quick housekeeping, Your Honor. Sure. So we don't have another witness waiting outside for tonight, I assume the court's okay with that?
Yes, I figured. Oh, hold on. All right, sorry about that.
No problem, Ryan Williams and Olivia Walker.
Thank you, Mr.
Michael Barber and Mr. David Crawford, who's present next to me.
But we have informed defense counsel that even if this is our last witness today, we anticipate arresting tomorrow morning.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I figured. I just thought we had gone since 2 o'clock, so I figured everyone needed a quick break. You can finish up with your cross, and then we'll call it a day.
I was dancing for break. I was looking at the jurors, and so I'm glad you did that, Jim.
Yeah.
Yes, Your Honor. State's ready.
Perfect. Okay, go ahead and bring the jury in, please.
Jury enter.
Mr. Barber, are you ready to proceed?
Thank you, Judge. Captain Detective. So I want to start just by following up on some of the stuff you testified about earlier on direct. Specifically, I want to discuss your hypotheses about the hot engine of the bike starting the fire. On that one, I believe you testified when the state was asking you that if the fire had originated with the bike, that you would have expected to have seen more of the plastic and the foam in the seat consumed. Is that correct?
Correct.
And also the aluminum in the radiator?
If there was a fire generated from that particular area, yes.
Now, whether the aluminum was melted or not, and the amount of the plastic and foam that was melted, wouldn't that largely depend on a couple factors? Would that be accurate to say?
It could, yes.
Would one of the factors be how hot the fire was?
Yes.
And would another one be how long the fire was burning?
Yes.
So is it possible for a gasoline fire to have been low enough in temperature or not burning for long enough? Sorry, let me break that down a little bit. That was going to be a compound question, so we like to keep it one question, one topic. Is it possible that if a fire was not burning long enough, it would not have consumed all of the plastic on the bike?
If the fire was not burning long enough, correct.
And same thing with the aluminum. If it was not burning long enough, then we would not expect to see all the aluminum melted, correct?
Correct.
And same thing with the foam that you had mentioned?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the heat of the fire, I want to talk to you about that a little bit. Gasoline burns at different temperatures sometimes, correct? And that depends on various factors,
Yes.
including the grade of the gasoline,
Yes.
the concentration of the gasoline,
Yes.
how long the gasoline has been on fire for, correct?
Yes.
In this particular case, you were not present when the fire was burning, right?
Correct.
So you were not able to take out some sort of a thermometer and actually measure the temperature of the fire, right?
No, it was not.
You cannot say for sure how hot that fire was burning.
No, I cannot.
And you reviewed videos in this case, correct?
Yes.
And pretty quickly after the fire was ignited, people used fire extinguishers to put the fire out on the bike, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Now, you had also testified that one of the factors you looked at in ruling out that hypothesis, meaning the hot engine bike igniting the fire, was the fact that there had some time had elapsed between when the bike was driven and when the fire ignited, giving it time to cool, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you personally cannot testify to exactly how hot that motorcycle engine was when it rolled into the Wawa, right?
That's correct.
And so you can't testify to how much it would have cooled down by the time the fire ignited either, right?
Correct.
I believe you testified that if a machine, such as a bike, was pushed to its extreme limits, that could cause the engine to heat up hot enough to make it more likely that it would ignite a fire based on gasoline fumes, right?
Yes.
Right. I mean, I want to break that down a little bit. So when you say drive it to its limits, you mean driving it very fast?
So when I talk about driving to its extreme, to its limits, typically that's either fast or hard. And that includes running the RPM gauge up to its red line.
So if somebody was driving a motorcycle for, I don't know, let's say 20 or 30 minutes at very high speeds consistently, that is something you would expect to increase the temperature of the engine, right?
I would expect it to increase, yes.
And you would expect that if somebody rode that motorcycle hard and fast for that amount of time, that it could increase the temperature of that engine to the point where it could ignite gasoline vapors, correct?
It is possible.
And when we say riding a motorcycle hard, we already talked about going fast, right? Are you familiar with motorcycles yourself?
I don't ride.
Gotcha. You're vaguely familiar with what a motorcycle is, right? You've seen them pass you on the highway, things like that.
Yeah, and I've dealt with that in fires.
I believe one of the other things you said is the fire would have ignited faster if it was a hot engine from the bike that had caused it, correct?
That would be time-wise.
Time-wise. And that's... I'm sorry, what did you mean by that? Just explain that for us.
In the video, the ignition of the fire, it started almost immediately.
Now, we've already established that it's not the actual gasoline, it's the gasoline vapors that catch fire and burn, right?
Yes.
And the concentration of those vapors, or the, let me reword that. The longer the gasoline is left there in the ground, the more those vapors are going to concentrate in the area, right?
If it's an open or an enclosed area, that makes a difference, yes.
And so in this particular case, the bike, would you say, was kind of wedged between, there's pillars and a pump to one side and a car on the other?
I believe that the bike was actually next to the pump.
Okay. And so in a case like that, well, let me ask you this. Do you know how windy it was that day?
I believe I pulled the weather and there was no given wind breeze.
And so when we're looking at whether it's an enclosed space or an open space, what we're really looking at is whether the concentration of fuel vapors were able to dissipate, right?
Yes.
And without wind, that would affect how quickly the vapors would dissipate, right?
Yes.
And it would allow the fuel vapors to concentrate more because there's no wind blowing them away, right?
It depends, but yes.
And the longer they're left there, the more those vapors are going to concentrate, correct?
Yes.
And the more concentrated they are, the more likely it is that they are going to ignite, right?
Yes.
Thank you. And I believe you're established, as part of your investigation, you actually went to the Wawa, right? The scene?
Yes, I did.
And when you were there, you looked around to observe all the evidence for yourself?
Yes, what was in the area and what was left behind.
Okay. And you were able to observe on the ground a circular imprint where you believe the gasoline was burning, right?
Where is it cooled from falling out of the dirt bike? Yes.
And you also testified that you located the fuel cap, right?
Yes.
And that fuel cap, I believe we saw the photograph of it, looked melted beyond recognition almost, right?
It had slight melting to it.
And that fuel cap, based on your investigation analysis, was made out of plastic, right?
Yes.
And so the fact that that cap, that plastic cap, had the damage that we did observe, the fact that it had that damage tells you that that cap was in the fire, right?
It was affected by fire.
Because gasoline fire is hot enough to melt plastic, right?
It does.
And this particular gasoline fire, based on your expert opinion, was hot enough to melt plastic, right?
Yes.
And it wasn't just the gas cap, you also saw melted plastic on the motorcycle, correct?
Yes.
And that included on the seat
Yes.
and a ring around the fuel tank, I believe you had said?
I don't recall that.
Or yeah, I think it was a ring around where the fuel cap goes in.
I don't recall.
That's all right. The handlebars,
Handlebar.
generally speaking, there was a lot of melted plastic involved in this case, right?
And I believe it's rubber.
And rubber. Yeah. And that is because of the fire, correct?
It was affected by fire.
Right,
Yes.
so just logically speaking, the fire melted that plastic, right? That'd be a simple way of saying it.
Yes.
Okay. If there were other plastic items in the area where the fire was igniting, you would expect to see evidence of those melting and cooling as well, right?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the clerk?
Yeah.
You want me to put them on screen? Mr. Barber?
If we can, I'm just going to show them the taser. It's looking for the ones that Yeah. I am now showing you what's been entered into evidence as states Exhibit 13. Are you able to see that clearly?
Yes.
And do you recognize that to be a Taser 7?
Yes.
Do you see any melted plastic or cooling plastic anywhere on that?
I do not.
What about from that angle?
No.
And that angle?
No.
And no, that's it. Thank you. So, based on that, would it be safe to say that that taser you just looked at was not affected by fire?
Correct.
So it was not melted or burned by the same fire that melted and burned all the plastic parts on the bike, correct?
Correct.
And so, as an arson expert, that tells you the taser was not in the fire, not the same fire that that motorcycle was in, correct?
So there's a couple of different reasonings behind the possibility of it not having fire damage. One of which is
Well,
it was.
and if I may object, Your Honor, non-responsive, I asked a yes or no question.
The motion is sustained.
Okay. So, let me ask you this. This particular fire, there is a plastic device in this fire. Based upon all the evidence in your entire investigation, you would expect that piece of plastic to have melting and cooling on it, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. By the time you had arrived on the scene to begin your investigation there, someone had already removed the taser that had been discharged from where it had been left on the ground, correct?
Yes.
And so you were never able to see exactly where that taser was in relation to where all the other evidence was, right?
Correct.
as an investigator, would have been helpful to you in your investigation to have seen exactly where it was laying, correct?
Absolutely.
Now, I want to talk about some of the hypotheses. The state already went through the hypotheses you put in your report, right? And there are other reasonable hypotheses within the realm of reason for how that fire could have started as well, correct?
Yes.
You would agree that if a piece of metal was dragged across pavement, that could cause a spark or enough friction to ignite gasoline vapors, right?
Yes.
Based on your expert analysis, I understand you've given an opinion about what you think the most likely cause is, but based on your expert analysis, you cannot say with 100% confidence that it was a taser discharge that started this fire, can you?
No.
So we'd agree it's possible something else other than the taser could have caused that fire to ignite.
It is possible.
And you would agree that those other possibilities are within the realm of reason, right?
Yes.
Now, I want to talk about some other possible hypotheses. You've presumably been to a gas station before in the state of Florida?
Yes.
You've pumped gas into a vehicle?
Yes.
And at every gas station, you see little stickers that say, don't be on your cell phone, right?
Yes.
And there's stickers warning people to turn off their vehicles when they're filling up with gas too, right?
Yes.
You would agree that having a vehicle turned on while pumping gas into it creates a risk of igniting a fire, right?
Yes.
And you don't know whether that particular motorcycle was off or on when the fire was ignited, right?
I do not.
You don't know whether the electrical system of the bike was off or on at the time the fire was ignited either.
I do not.
You'd agree that electrical devices can create static electricity discharges in general, right?
Yes.
And would you agree that if there's a static discharge from a battery of a phone or something, from like a cell phone or something like that, that can absolutely ignite fuel vapors, right?
Yes.
In your own life experiences, you've experienced static electricity shock before, right?
Yes.
You've maybe worn socks on the carpet and shocked yourself when you touched a doorknob.
Yes.
So then, between your own life experiences and your experience as an arson investigator, you would agree that different cloths rubbing against each other can generate static electricity buildup, right?
Yes.
And that static electricity buildup could then be discharged to ignite a gasoline fire, correct?
It is possible.
And you stated that you watched multiple body camera videos?
Yes.
And in all those videos, did you see multiple deputies struggling on the ground with a suspect?
Yes.
And presumably everyone in those videos was wearing clothes, right?
Yes.
No one was naked, no one's dressed in leather.
No.
They're all wearing some sort of cloth-based clothing, right?
Yes.
And during that struggle, they're all kind of rubbing up against themselves and each other, aren't they?
Yes.
And if static electricity built up from cloth rubbing up against each other and was discharged, that could also ignite fuel vapors, couldn't it?
Yes.
And as a former law enforcement officer, you have some knowledge of tasers, right?
I have a little bit, yes.
And enough knowledge to know that they are electrical devices
Yes.
and they generate electricity, correct?
Yes.
And you would agree there's a risk of a taser initiating some sort of a static electricity discharge just based off the fact it's an electronic device, correct?
Yes.
And that could be another reason or another method by which a gasoline fire could ignite, right?
Yes. It's possible.
you did write a report in this case, correct?
I did.
Okay. And ultimately, at the end of your report, you concluded the ignition of the fire was accidental, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. No further questions.
Detective, did you just hear defense counsel suggest that socks started this fire? Did you hear that? Because that's what I heard. Did you hear that?
I did.
Did you see any socks on the video?
I did not.
Do you know how hot or how much static electricity somebody would have to get up, what temperature would have to be to ignite fuel vapors?
Fuel vapor ignites roughly 560 degrees.
So somebody would have to rub their socks on the carpet to get up to 500 degrees to ignite fuel vapor.
To ignite a fuel vapor, yes.
Okay, did you see anything like that on the video?
No.
No? Okay. You were going to answer a question, and then you were stopped by defense counsel's objection to your question. What were you going to say, your full answer as to why this taser might not have damage on it?
So there's multiple reasons why it might not have damage. One of which is the fact that it was not directly involved in the fire. It was in the vicinity, but prior to the fire actually growing in heat and intensity, it was removed from that area. Another is depending on the type of plastic that it's made from. Different plastics melt at different temperatures. The range, I believe, is low 400s to upper almost 600s, upper 500s and almost 600 degrees.
Did you have an opportunity to examine the plastic, or do you know the plastic that that taser was made from?
I do not.
Right. You said that the cause of the fire was accidental. Can you explain what you mean by that?
We have classifications for fires. We have incendiary fires, we have undetermined fires, and we have accidental fires. Our incendiary fires are typically reserved for set fires. Somebody intentionally sets a fire. Undetermined is there are multiple possibilities, such as in a house, if we're in the kitchen and we believe maybe there's an air fryer and a crock pot on the counter. We can't figure out which one exactly started that fire. We'll run it as an undetermined fire because we don't know which of those items started that fire. Accidental fires are just that. It's an accidental fire. It's accidentally discharging a taser. It's smoking while you're on oxygen. It's leaving candles burning and falling asleep. Stuff like that we reserve for the accident fires.
Could it also be intentionally discharging a taser but not intending to cause the fire and doing so?
We reserve intentional for incendiary fires.
So somebody purposely set the fire?
Typically, yes.
How many spontaneous cell phone fires have you responded to at gas stations in the course of your career? Are you aware of anything or any case that you've worked on or anyone at your agency where a cell phone, simple use of a cell phone at a gas station caused a fire?
At a gas station,
No further questions.
May I? So, Detective, you testified that different plastics melt at different temperatures, correct?
yes.
Now, this particular fire was hot enough to melt all sorts of various types of plastics that were found on that bike, right? If this taser was in that fire, you would not expect it to be in pristine condition, would you?
Correct.
No matter what kind of plastic it's made out of.
Correct.
And you would agree, based on those photographs, it looks like it's in pretty pristine condition, doesn't it?
Yes.
Now, you stated before that one of the reasons why it may not be damaged because it was removed from the area of the fire before it got too hot or something, correct?
Yes.
That's pretty much what you said. So, for instance, if somebody was throwing it, they were throwing it when it went off and the fire ignited, and then it kept going off in the direction it was being thrown, would that be an example of why a taser would not have any marks on it in this particular case?
Yes.
Based upon all your training experience, your expert opinions, you are unable to give any opinion at all as to whether a taser was discharged intentionally or on accident in this case, correct?
Correct.
And the state had asked you if you had ever seen personally in one of your investigations a case where there was a fire caused by I believe, a static electricity discharge of a gas bomb. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you agree that warnings placed on the gas pumps must be there for a reason?
Yes.
Would you agree that there's a first time for everything?
Yes.
Would you agree that you personally have not seen every various type of fire ignition that exists on Earth yet?
Yes.
Would you agree that every year you're an arson investigator, you see new things and learn new things?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You may sit down. Is he excused?